Hello and happy Friday, wherever you are. I hope you're staying warm, safe, and sane. Welcome to the webinar regarding Atlantic Canada's green jobs potential. This webinar offers a preview of our key research findings around the current and upcoming green jobs in Atlantic Canada, both within traditional industries and as well emerging sectors. The study included investigating emerging jobs and diversification within the green economy and consideration of those within the blue economy. My name is Claudine Vidalo, and joining me today as co-presenter is Jenny Peters, Senior Manager of Research at EcoCanada. A few housekeeping rules before we begin. The session is being recorded and will be shared with all the attendees and as well those who may have missed it when it's ready. That's likely going to happen after this session or early next week. We have muted all the participants, but there is an opportunity to participate in a live Q&A later near the end of the session. But if you prefer to type in your questions via the chat box, you're also welcome to do that. My only request is if you do participate in a live Q&A that you then mute your mic when your question has been answered. We're also monitoring chat for reactions and questions, and so you're welcome to type in any comment, any observation, or any question within a specific slide right there and there, so that if we are able to flag it, we can address it at that time. In this virtual conference, we are represented by a variety of stakeholder groups, including employers, governments, and academia. I am sure we are also reaching out to many new friends, practitioners, innovators, job seekers, and civil society representatives. Again, a warm welcome to you all. Let me just quickly share the results of the poll question that we had live as you joined the webinar. As we can see, there is a wide variety of stakeholders that have joined us today. And again, welcome to everybody. We see a good balance of industry or professional associations as well, government joining us today, but also representatives from the industry employers, workers or job seekers, as well as those who prepare the talent pool, the educators or the trainers. So that's really great. Equally important really is, again, respecting that we have to be inclusive in accelerating clean growth across Canada and particularly in Atlantic Canada. So I'm very pleased to let you guys know that this study that we've conducted was actually made possible through the strong support and partnership we've had with econext and the Maritimes Energy Association, or MIA, to really, at the end of the day, contextualize the green job potential in Atlantic Canada. So I want to introduce everybody to Kieran Hanley. He's the Executive Director at econext, and he's here to say a few words. So over to you, Kieran.
Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in Canada and where you're tuning in. My name is Kieran Hanley. I'm the Executive Director of econext. econext is an industry association of about 200 members strong that work collectively towards the acceleration of clean growth and the green economy in Newfoundland and Labrador. And our members are involved in all sorts of different industries, all of those that are key, of course, to our economy, from fisheries to mining, to renewables, to oil and gas, to forestry, and so on. We are in the midst of a freezing rainstorm right now, by the way, so if I happen to cut out and half the people drop off this call, you know why. The power has gone, but hopefully that won't transpire yet. We're really excited about this webinar. There's been so much talk over the years on things like green jobs, clean growth, And when the pandemic hit, those discussions really seemed to intensify and accelerate. But the reality is that a green job can really be viewed very differently depending on where in the world you are, depending on the structure of your local economy, and also the clean growth potential within your region and the opportunities for that region. What is available in terms of a green job can be dramatically different from even what might be available next door in another province. So we set out to partner with the Maritimes Energy Association and EcoCanada to define what a green job meant in the Atlantic Canadian context. We wanted to help set the stage for our existing key industries here in the region to make the most of the supports that currently exist around clean growth and for the creation of green jobs, and those that we expect may be just around the corner. And we also want industries to be able to view green jobs through their own lenses and understand that this does apply to them when otherwise they may never have considered that a green job was in any way applicable to their world. So I think the work that EcoCanada has done for us over the past months has really helped us move the needle in the right direction on all of this. And we're very excited to get this information out there. And a special thank you to Claudine and Jenny for their work on this. And of course, a special thanks to the Maritimes Energy Association, who helped us ensure that we were able to cover the Maritimes provinces as well as Newfoundland and Labrador in this work to give a fulsome Atlantic Canadian perspective. So with all that said, I'm really excited to hear about the results of the work from EcoCanada, and like you, look forward to the discussions and the opportunities that are just around the corner for us. So back to you, Claudine.
Thanks, Kieran. And that's a really excellent introduction to, why we did this research. Hopefully people can really get insights and some, qualitative information about what we found. And more importantly, be able to use that information to kind of help support and accelerate that talent that's needed to accelerate really the green growth in Atlantic Canada. So you've set the context, and I do want to kind of overview that as part of the agenda. We're going to go through the research findings, and then one of the things that we've done also is identify the some of the talent solutions that probably could benefit the entire region in relation to nurturing those green jobs and emerging ones that are needed between now and maybe in the next 5 years. The other thing too is we'll obviously dedicate time at the end for Q&A, and as well to kind of have more dialogue style of Q&A as opposed to just more static question and answer. If you want to participate and jump in to the dialogue, you're welcome to do that, and just let us know via the chat group. So before I present the findings, just a quick overview of the scope and methodology. This was a qualitative study, but it involved a lot of steps. So there was secondary research that was done throughout the project, which was about 6 months in the making. And those are listed for you in the one of the boxes there. But the other thing we did was kind of establish that labor demand picture as in relation to the greening of industries, organizations, and as well the workforce. And to do that, we interviewed 33 industry representatives on those current and anticipated green job requirements and the drivers for such. Additionally, we consulted with 5 industry representatives who spoke about the training needs and gaps that they've observed over time. Now, we went to the phase 2 piece of work, which is the identifying the workforce solutions. And to do that, we had to bring together a cross-section of stakeholders from the employers we've consulted with and added governments, the educators and trainers, and other stakeholder groups to do the conversation or dialogue about what talent solutions are needed, stemming from the work or the research that we uncovered. Now, the other thing you'll see on this slide is that the different industries that we consulted with. And, Kieran and the Maritimes Energy Association have been very helpful in helping guide us and connect us with these industry players. I'm trying to move to the next slide, so be patient. Now, when we approached the research, the first thing we had to do was come in with a framework of what we think are, green jobs, knowing that the end goal was actually to identify or develop a framework, a better framework, hopefully, of what those green jobs are in the Atlantic Canada context. And so what we came in was the definition brought forward by the International Labour Organization, and that definition is brought to you here. As you'll notice, there's a recognition that green jobs exist across different sectors, but also that it's more defined based on the output or their contributions to environmental outcomes or targets. Now, for some people, that's probably good enough. For some, better definitions or more expanded definition will be required, and we'll get to that later. So with that framework that was presented, so off we go, interviewing all of those industries. And again, the scope and methodology listed some of the number of industry representatives we consulted for each one. We did come up with what were the overall findings from the research. And there's really 5 key themes that we came to. One is that innovation is key to driving green growth. The other thing that was very interesting, it's really huge learning for me, was that there were diverging perspectives on greening, whether it was at the industry level, the organizational level, down to their operations, and then their people. We did find that across the various industries, there were certain green jobs that resonated or were commonly needed, and some of them were expressed to be highly in demand. But this is a big learning for me too, is that we learned that the green growth doesn't necessarily translate to a lot of new green jobs or emerging jobs. It actually will involve existing workers needing to upskill or reskill to be part of that green growth, either as driving them or supporting them in one way or another. Lastly, and this is probably common across many kind of research around talent development, attraction, and retention, is that collaboration is needed across the board. And that's the reason, hopefully, that we've been engaging with a lot of stakeholders to help identify, again, those green jobs potential and talk about how we can kind of meet those needs. So let's get into each of the findings more closely. For the first one about innovation driving green growth, we definitely acknowledge, or through the consultations, we found that there is common recognition of how technology or innovation is going to help us achieve our sustainability goals, and as well offer financial benefits to even the industries that are investing in them. And in some cases, there's going to be some conflict in terms of the decision to invest in stuff. And I think what's nice is that we found that there's actually a lot of programs out there or supports to kind of help industry navigate through that process. One of the things that was also identified is how electrification can also help us meet net zero goals. And we're talking about electrification from the context of the application to industries. There was a recognition that there were areas including truck fleets, forklifts, and other warehousing equipment that could really benefit from this innovation. But there were also concerns that electrification may not yet be possible or practical in other areas, such as heavy industrial equipment. That said, as things are made possible, there was a recognition that as we move into pursuing this type of innovation across all fronts, there will be an increased need for electricians, electrical engineers, and workers with a blend of mechanical and electrical skill sets. This was the other interesting part that I was talking about, we learned from the research that when we interviewed a wide variety of industry stakeholders across different industries, that where they're at with the greening of their organization or their company operations, as well as their perspective of how to achieve that, differed across the board. And so what you have in front of you is actually a diagram that hopefully kind of captures what we found. On the lower left corner of the diagram, that brown bubble you see is where we found companies, particularly in traditional industries, that are still at the early stages of greening, and they're for now seeking advice on greening, whether that involves hiring external expertise to kind of provide that advice, or perhaps starting to kind of look at having an in-house person kind of do that. As you move through the spectrum, and it's moving to the right side of that diagram, in the lower right side, you see companies, again, mostly within the traditional industries, where they've embraced greening. And so greening is embedded in their operations, as well as, for the most part, they're starting to embed it into the talent themselves. Providing green literacy or carbon literacy that applies to that industry for their workers as well. So in some cases, you see kind of a spectrum of workers that are really more, their jobs are 100% more green roles, and ones that have, supporting roles, but have that sustainability mindset in place. And that's because the company has embraced that. Now, what we have to recognize, and we mentioned this earlier, is that there are emerging sectors in Canada. We've heard about the sustainable blue economy. We've heard of companies, producing clean tech or offering clean tech. And so we also interviewed those types of companies. And so what's recognized is that their business is inherently green. Their output, the service that they offer is green. And so there's divergence of, do they count the entire workforce as green? For some, they would, but they do recognize that some of the workers, for example, you just think about the folks in HR, accounting, they may not necessarily recognize themselves as green workers, even if they're working for a green company. So that's very interesting finding for us. Now, I want to focus on, the companies that are probably at the early stages of recognizing the need or how to green their operations. Some of the situations or considerations that we need to account for of why they're not in the other side of the spectrum is that there's obviously uncertainty, hesitancy, they're waiting, seeing, maybe there's no driver for them in terms of compliance and all that stuff to move towards greening their operations at a faster rate. But at the same time, there are drivers about being the market leader, being able to learn from, international players, or even, the champions within Canada, to be able to get some guidance around how to go about it. And so the other thing that they've expressed as a constraint is really not always easy to identify how to do it, current carbon footprint, how do they measure that, how they create achievable targets, and then what are the actions that are needed. And that's the reason why I think they're at the stage where they're seeking advice. Now, the common theme, again, as I mentioned, is that there seems to be a lack of consistent definition of what constitutes a green job. And so we're going to seek to define that later, but let's present first, again, as jobs and skills are being presented throughout this slide deck, you'll get to see why we've concluded that the definition of green jobs is where we've landed at near the end of this presentation. Now, again, one of the common key findings across the board is that there were definitely green roles that were recognized across all industries to be very critical to driving clean growth, but also in some areas, they're very much in high demand. Energy auditors, advisors, environmental sustainability advisors, engineers, and technology experts. For the most part, those suggest like STEM backgrounds for sure. Now, the other piece that's interesting is that for some industries or some environmental fields, if you will, some of those are becoming more complex, or there's a lot more attention put to them. And that is actually resulting in very specialized roles. And some of the things we discovered is that, waste auditing, renewable energy engineers and technical specialists and climate change specialists are the ones that have been discovered. We may not have looked into this very closely, but there's also the advancement of ESG work that probably something that needs to be recognized as also kind of emerging or growing. Now, again, that message of not everything is, entirely having to be a full-blown green job or an emerging green job. For the most part, we find that there was recognition. Many of the existing workers will actually have to upskill, reskill to actually be part of that clean growth. Here are some of the skills or functions that need to be kind of considered in order to ensure a strong future for Atlantic Canada's green and blue economies. In some areas, we have to recognize that not every worker is expected to have all of these. And there's probably even a spectrum that if you're working in a small or medium-sized enterprise, or you are in a startup mode, in some cases, it's only 1 or 2 people that have both the STEM background, but also having to pick up some of these other kind of non-green expertise. We've talked about stakeholder relations, having that entrepreneurship kind of attitude, many other things that you need to pick up in order to kind of help market your company and be part of that solution. So on the other hand, we find that in larger companies, there could be workers that are really doing their traditional job, like those in trades, but then there are some components of the greening of their skill sets or their mindset that needs to happen, as I mentioned earlier. I mentioned the collaboration as well as the final overarching theme around the research. And really, this is really important. It's happening in some areas and more could be done. Some of the things that were cited was how to kind of advance those technologies and help them move from the early stages to even more the commercialization and adoption across the board. R&D expertise at post-secondary was really cited as being useful to kind of help industries advance in this space. Working with talent suppliers like post-secondary institutions, aligning the skills and expertise needed by industry to kind of really continue enhancing those programs to produce those talent that's needed was key. And also the role that governments play to support green growth. And there's a lot of things cited as things that governments are helping greatly with, but there were also pieces that were commented on where we could do more. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jenny, who's now going to present industry-specific highlights from our research. So over to you, Jenny.
Thanks, Claudine. So we've got buckets of different types of organizations that we spoke with. As we can see here, natural resources organizations, those involved in the marine sector, alternative energy, renewable energy, those who are involved in manufacturing of many different types of products, specifically waste management and recovery organizations, and then other green expertise and technology, including ESG and energy efficiency for buildings and a variety of different types of green tech as well. So let's dive into the natural resources sector for a moment and talk a little bit about what came out of our discussions with those organizations. As might be suspected, sustainability is key to the success of the sector, whether it's a mining organization or a fisheries and aquaculture organization or an oil and gas organization, making sure that the resources that are being extracted are continuing to be available and are being extracted in a sustainable manner is important. It's even more important these days as companies are looking for investors and funding for new projects. Those investors and funders are looking more carefully at environmental policies and mandates, and these companies following best practices. Now that's from the top down and from the bottom up. So individuals, whether they're in the front line and they are developing or developing new sorry, Claudine. They're developing new processes or products. They are involved in sustainability and development of green technology. Opportunities specifically noted for this sector included environmental advisors, people who are capable and competent in software development and programming, science and engineering for development of new innovative processes and products, and also those individuals who are supporting the production of these goods and services. The processing and transportation sectors are also in need of individuals to sustain and to grow those organizations. Let's take a look at the marine sector next. So here we had a wide variety of different types of opportunities and challenges that appeared in the marine sector. One of the greatest challenges that has come up is the limited amount of development for support of lower emissions vessels within Atlantic Canada. It's acknowledged that in other parts of the world, there are development of new vessels with hybrid engines and new types of technology. What we don't have at the moment is an opportunity or availability of resources to support the implementation of those sorts of technologies from Atlantic Canada. What we do have, however, are individuals who are working towards developing new technology and new processes in the ports and in the transportation sector. And an important certification in the marine transportation industry called the Green Marine Certification is moving the industry forward towards more sustainable practices and transparent reporting. Let's move into the next sector, the alternative energy or renewable energy sector. We refer to this as alternative energy because we're including nuclear energy in this particular group, but it also includes our wind and our solar and our hydro technologies. The real factor influencing the growth of jobs in this sector is the ability of these producers to get access to the grid. The development of a new wind farm or solar farm or hydro plant is going to be contingent on the ability for the electricity that's being generated or hydrogen in some cases to be sold into the marketplace. And the access to markets is really a big factor that is influencing the demand for these sorts of individuals. But what we can say is that to a large extent, the individuals who are able to assist in the development of wind technology offshore are the same sorts of individuals who are developing that technology onshore. Similarly, the individuals who are developing the technology for tidal or other types of production are going to be in large part engineers, technicians, technologists who are operating or can operate in multiple fields, which is favorable for the development or the growth of the sector ultimately, because it's going to be relatively easy to pull people into that sector from other sectors. In addition to that, we have a need for climate change specialists, especially developing modeling of how climate change is going to impact the environment, and environmental technicians who are going to be monitoring the impact of the industrial activity on the environment. Let's move on to the manufacturing sector. So here we talked about, we talked to manufacturing firms, some of whom were involved in green technology directly, and many of whom were not. And we talked to these organizations to find out what sort of greening or sustainability practices are being implemented. We found that the impetus for sustainability or greenhouse gas emissions reductions or other types of greening initiatives were generally driven by the need for competitiveness purposes. So in the cases where these manufacturing firms were finding themselves or believed that they would be at a competitive disadvantage in adopting these new technologies or processes, they're a little bit more hesitant, and the uncertainty is a little bit greater for those organizations. That said, there are specific initiatives that manufacturing firms can focus on in order to implement sustainability, including the waste reduction, making their operations as efficient as possible, and adopting technology or automation that streamlines the production and ensures that the quality and the environmental impact, quality is as high as possible and the environmental impact is as low as possible. Moving on to the waste management sector. One of the things that we found in this particular sector is that the jobs available for individuals on a team devoted to waste management is very wide, very broad, including laborers, waste auditors or technicians, engineers to design technology, scientists. All of these individuals are working together for the same basic idea, which is that we want to reduce the waste that is being generated and make the most out of that, that output to turn that into new products whenever possible. So focusing on waste management and recovery of products, especially in new areas, for example, taking apart ships and developing the components of those ships into new operations. We also look at technology solutions using data analysis, so we can pull together the information from a variety of different types of products and put them into a well-established new product line. And then, of course, there's public awareness and education. So we need individuals who are in the communication sphere, public relations sphere, research sphere, and education sphere in order to help drive that sector. And then we took a look at some other green expertise and technology organizations. There were a lot of different, very specific growing jobs in this bucket, including those energy auditors and advisors, installers of solar technology, and there was a wide need for interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary or multidisciplinary skill sets. Individuals who are adept at science and business or engineering and policy, and able to bring together teams of different individuals to meet the needs of the organization. There are also some very unique types of jobs that are going to be in demand in different, depending on the technology that's being developed or the process that's being developed. And artificial intelligence is one of these areas. Energy modeling, so that's another form of data analysis for climate change. Hydrology is another specialized science that's going to be in demand. For the development of green buildings, we also found that the individuals from the construction laborers all the way up to the engineers and designers and the owners and operators of the buildings are also going to need to have additional training in energy efficiency and sustainability and the benefits of those in terms of the reducing the cost of operating a facility over time. Unfortunately, there are some challenges in getting people in this energy efficiency for building space trained in Atlantic Canada. Right now, it looks like individuals must travel either to Nova Scotia, Ontario, or British Columbia in order to receive training in sustainability practices. And then lastly, we also found that the green tech sector, the clean tech sector is growing, and there's a lot of support for new types of products and innovations that can help make our planet a little bit cleaner and a little bit more sustainable. There are opportunities for new businesses and new service offerings. Many of those opportunities involve the development of the products. So engineers, scientists, people involved in the research and development were most important to that sector. But it's also key to that sector, of course, is to get from a kind of a pilot project to a commercial project. You need people who are very adept at business management and individuals who are good at policy and understanding the regulations required for the particular product that they're creating. Overall, there is intense competition for individuals with the skills for research and development in the green tech sector in Atlantic Canada. It's more difficult for senior positions, and in a lot of cases, the clean tech sector is poaching individuals from other industries in order to find the talent that they need. That wraps up that sector. The last discussion focuses on a couple of individual sectors or insights. One thing that of course came across is this development of the environmental, social, and governance aspects of a project or organization, the ESG components of these organizations. This is a new and evolving area. A wide variety of different individuals are going to be participating in ensuring that the monitoring of the project and organization are being developed and being monitored and sustained in transparent fashion. And they also need to become more specialized. So in many cases, the idea of becoming greener is not so much that the individuals involved have an environmental awareness. It's that the products that they are producing or the processes that they're developing are very specific to the environmental sector, and that the operations and the innovation that takes place within these organizations is going to drive green growth over time.
Great. Thank you so much, Jenny. There were actually a few questions that came in as you were presenting the industry-specific slides or findings. I do want to address those because there was a fair amount of questions of why we weren't able to include or focus on certain industries. And Kieran, feel free to jump in. But we do acknowledge that the research had specific industries of focus. As much as possible, we've tried to conduct secondary research of other industries that weren't kind of part of the primary research. But there's an overall recognition really on our end that this was an initial step and much learning process to get from the experiences and ideas of actually some of those industry stakeholders that have a role in the green economy. It's not everybody that we've been able to include in the consultation process. So we acknowledge that we need to do further work to really remain current on trends and drivers, not just within these industries, but the others that also exist. So thank you for recognizing those other sectors within the Atlantic Canada that we probably need to kind of look into as well. Okay. Before we jump into Q&A, I just wanted to quickly share some of the talent solutions that we've identified from the roundtable sessions we've conducted with about 24, 25 stakeholders. What we've learned from that is that in order to accelerate and optimize the green growth in Atlantic Canada across all these industries we've covered in our research, it requires really an adequate supply of skilled and often cross-disciplinary talent across these industries, regions, as well within individual roles. So collaboration again between employers, governments, educators, and trainers should be a guiding principle as we kind of seek to pursue the solutions we've identified. Again, all in the areas of talent, attraction, development, and retention. So areas for potential partnerships include, on the talent attraction side, is really conducting career awareness work, and that could happen at the industry level. It could also happen at the professional or occupational level. There was recognition that experiential learning and offering green literacy, even to early learners like K to 12, would probably be beneficial to kind of help people understand how they could participate in green growth as part of the future workforce. There's also suggestions that targeted recruitment to a various set of talent sources should be pursued. Again, new entrants or those that haven't even come in but may be close to understanding which career path they want to take. Definitely mid-career transitioners was identified as an opportunity, and also recognizing that there's a growing pool of marginalized talent sources that we could do. And again, it needs to be targeted recruitment because each one faces their own barriers, but also opportunities that they present to this growing workforce. One of the things that I wanted to show is, as I mentioned earlier, was we did this research partly to understand the green jobs potential, but also to make sense of the green jobs in the context of Atlantic Canada. And so from all the findings that we presented to you today, what we've came up with is an enhanced definition of green jobs that we hope we can carry forward as we continue to try to identify, green jobs across different industries and across the region. So stemming from the fact that green jobs really are there to seek to positively and directly contribute to the preservation or restoration of the environment, regardless of industry, we've identified two types of green jobs. Really, those that are intrinsically green, which means they're very much driving the goals around environmental protection, natural resource management, or sustainability. And for the most part, we've identified that they require in-depth green skills, knowledge, attributes, and attitudes. Then there's the workforce that's really growing and perhaps not a lot of agreement about whether they're in or out, but we can recognize that supporting green jobs also matter. And so they also contribute directly to the green outcomes, but they may not require as heavy of an understanding of the green knowledge and have green skills necessarily. So I hope that makes sense. Now, I bring back that diverging perspective of the greening of companies or industries. And so what's interesting is that the definition that you just saw in the previous slide, how it applies here is that we're going to see that evolution of, growth in the intrinsically green jobs as more companies kind of get on board with greening and pursue, green innovation and growth. On the other hand, as again, the other impact on that is that those very same companies, their existing workforce, we will see that tremendous growth on those types of jobs that need to kind of have some sense of sustainable mindset, some level of green understanding or skills, so that they can really contribute to the overall goals within the company. It's interesting. It's going to be constantly evolving, and we might find that we might need to revise the framework at some point or revisit it. But at this point, it feels like a good guiding principle that we need to kind of present and helps us define what those careers are within the green economy. Now, on the other hand, as we kind of move towards defining and doing talent attraction initiatives, there is that, again, recognition that the workforce currently could really be play a key role in pursuing green growth. And one of the things, or there were a lot of suggestions around talent development and retention, and that could be done in the lens of enhanced post-secondary programming, agile training and continuing education that's really designed to meet industry needs, but also needs to accommodate different learning styles and settings. We recognize that there's been more shift to virtual delivery settings, but perhaps we could recognize that in some cases, remote folks, remote individuals may not necessarily have the tools or capability or capacity to even participate in those types. So perhaps one of the foundational pieces is offering enhanced digital literacy amongst these individuals so that they can partake in these types of learning platforms. So the other areas to future-proof the workforce could include, again, the sector-specific or the specialized training that we've kind of highlighted throughout the presentation. Again, career advancement within the existing workforce, but also recognizing that transitioners could be an avenue for that. And there were some industries that recognized they were kind of relying on that mid-career transitioners to kind of help them grow. So we can figure out how those mid-career transitioners, how they could contribute to a different industry or a different role altogether, and perhaps augment their skills and interests and their backgrounds to the mix. Lastly, we recognize that perhaps developing targeted short-term training for adaptive credentialing and upskilling is going to be useful as workers need to pick up new skills or upgrade existing ones. Oh, and I forgot to mention, on both the talent attraction, retention, and development side, there was also recognition that there's some employment and training grants that are really very helpful, but more could be done. One of the things that were mentioned is how about, especially for startups and small and medium-sized enterprises, they probably could benefit from employment programs that are dedicated for intermediate roles, because they need those folks that have those cross-disciplinary skill sets that they can kind of help the company market to customers, whether it's communities, individuals, or other businesses. So key consideration for where else we could kind of contribute and help with growth. That's it in terms of the presentation. I hope you kind of picked up a few insights here and there. I certainly did by kind of being very much involved in this research. We're going to open it up to Q&A. And so again, as a reminder, we're open for you guys to ask your questions live, and all you need to do is kind of unmute yourselves, and then just we'll call you and say you can chime in, and we'll address that live too. And then for those that have submitted questions, thank you. We'll go through that as I review them. But also for those that haven't but do have questions, please type them in the chat box, or again, speak up. Jenny, did you see anything that's outstanding? Sorry, I was talking and not looking.
Well, we did have one question come in that asked about green job seekers and opportunities for job fairs for those individuals. And the question is, can we expect similar ones in future webinars?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Jenny?
So the question is, green job seekers need some job fairs. Can we expect that in future webinars?
Yes, well, Eco-Canada does hold a virtual career fair. Hopefully we can do it more as a roadshow in the future. But Kieran, maybe you could speak to some of the career fairs or job fairs that you know happen within the area.
Sure, I guess one element to keep in mind here is that the research has shown that industries don't necessarily look at some of the jobs that they are kind of producing as being green yet to this point. So there will be a lot of work, I think, involved to kind of put together a green job fair to help folks understand what green jobs are within their own industries, and then to pull all that together in some sort of a fair. So interesting idea, but I would say that it would take time, just because this is all new stuff for everyone. And yeah, but very interesting idea.
Yeah, it is. And we do find that when Eco-Canada does the hold the job fairs, we do have participation from traditional sectors as well. But you're right, Kieran. I mean, we do get a lot more participation for those that are environmental goods and service companies, because it's very clear to them that they're kind of having to fill in the entire spectrum of jobs they have. Jenny, sorry, I haven't looked at the question list again, but is there anything else that came in, or does anybody want to ask their questions live?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Pauline Maxwell. I'm with Academy Canada, which is a post-secondary institution in Newfoundland. I think you made a very valid point. You talked about the importance of collaboration for a green environment that involves industry and government and training institutions. And my role with Academy Canada in Newfoundland is that I am department head for bringing on all new programming for our campuses. And it involves all of that. You know, that involvement with industry, government. My question to you, because I've seen the importance of this firsthand, is you also mentioned the importance of government's policies and practices being, important as well. For Newfoundland, and I don't know if I can just narrow it down to Newfoundland, do you see anything coming or that's existing right now that will mandate or require employers to go green? And I just, to give an example, I know when legislation came out about occupational health and safety, we brought on a program there, and students flocked to that program because of that legislation requirement. So yeah, so that's my first, I have two questions. The first one was with regards, do you see anything here in Newfoundland that is currently, that employers are required, mandated? Do you see legislation coming? That's number one.
Great. I wonder, Jenny, if you want to speak to that, or Kieran, you can jump in. I do have comments also, or something to add afterwards.
Sure, I can hop on that one. Number one, we should connect for sure, so that we intend this to be the starting point of the discussion, and really do want to work with all of the various institutions, at least in our province, for us, to advance these things, and probably the same for our counterparts at in the Maritimes. When it comes to, I don't foresee an immediate future, and I cannot speak on behalf of government, I should say that, but I don't foresee an immediate future where things will be mandated to hire for green jobs. But there are regulations coming, federally and eventually provincially, things around carbon pricing, things around environmental, social, and governance reporting requirements, which will ultimately demand that organizations think about these things a lot more, which in turn will lead to, quote unquote, green jobs. So that's my somewhat aloof answer to that, but I don't think there will be a mandate, that thou shalt hire for this. But I think the way the world is moving now, it's easy to assume that some things are going to be in demand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you for that. And I was looking at more for them to go green themselves versus hiring people, like say for if the companies go green, if the government mandates saying you got to have some, component of your business that, is green in nature, to basically fulfill your role or do your part in being, with a green environment. So from that perspective, the second question I have right now, and I know that it was touched on basically, I just wonder, are there any incentives here? And Kieran, maybe you're the best one to answer this. Are there any incentives here now for employers to go green?
Maybe I'll kick that back to Eco Canada. I know there's lots of wage subsidies and programs available through your group that certainly are great incentives.
Yeah. I do want to jump into that, and Pauline, maybe my response will answer both questions that you raised. There are some compliance pieces that some industries, Jenny kind of covered that in her slides. Certain industries, there are kind of drives or targets to kind of meet, for example, emissions reduction. The other thing that might be a driver that may not necessarily be a government driven initiative would be just the ESG part, and especially in the areas of investment and stuff, right? So companies these days now have to be more holistic in their assessment. It's not just profitability, it has to be the ESG piece that they need to move forward with to be able to be attractive to investors, and even, to be honest with you, to talent, right? So a lot of people are now more invested in really being in roles that really contribute to a greater extent rather than just it being an income source. So I think that could drive companies to really consider being more green. And some of the solutions actually come from the employees themselves. The question about motivators is an interesting one. And there's a lot of government programs out there that actually help advance research and development and in the pursuit of innovation and more clean tech kind of areas, right, within various industries. And so there's a lot of programs and even funding available from government. I don't know if folks have heard of Clean Hub from the Government of Canada. It's an initiative, joint initiative from ISED, NRCan, and I believe ECCC. So maybe someone could look into that. They list some of the programs that are currently available, some more generic, some specific to industries.
Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. I know we've hit the hour. Jenny, I just wondered, sorry, as I was speaking, was there any other question we wanted to kind of address or able to? If people are wanting to stay a little bit longer?
I think the one question that sort of wraps up everything is there have been a lot of great suggestions. If you had to pick one recommendation with the highest impact, which one would you suggest?
Does anyone weigh in on that one? I have my own preference.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the, so you were looking for input on what specifically? Sorry.
Oh, it's a question that came in from another person in terms of all the recommendations we put forward, which ones would be the highest impact. I think Kieran already alluded to one of them, is kind of working with industry themselves to really help identify those green jobs and then be able to communicate that to the current and future workforce to really inform that talent management piece. So that is foundational work. But the other thing too is I think in some areas where we know clearly which jobs are green, I think we need to start doing that career awareness work. And so to kind of start evolving this process and kind of engaging that labor supply pool, the talent pool, both for those that are still making decisions in career and those that are trying to understand where they can fit. There are a couple of hands raised. So I don't know if people have time, but we can get to that, I think. Kieran and Jenny, are you guys okay with that?
Sure.
Yep.
Great. I think, Kevin, your hand was raised first, so go for it.
I don't know if you can see me. I have my video on. Can you see me? I don't know if you.
We can.
Okay, so that's a great presentation, and I'm an engineer, and I've been in the clean energy sector for quite a while, and I come from a technical college program, but I've been dealing with climate change literacy right at the youth level, and you hit on that the schools aren't delivering green curriculum of anything in the school. So and I'm really glad you guys mentioned that, because we have to start at K-12, and I didn't know, but you actually have to start at grades 2 and 3. It's that early, because I've been involved with a lot of outreach curriculum, and so I'm really glad you hit on that. A couple things that in the framework that we really have to work on in Canada is that Canada is 60% hydro, and you never mention it at all in your framework. And to get an example, Scotland now are 100% clean energy 2 years ago, and they did it with 500 micro hydro, 40% offshore wind, which we don't have, and 56,000 solar installations. Solar is gaining big recognition in Nova Scotia, and the second thing that wasn't in the framework is Scotia's really working hard on their EV green transportation, huge on the phase level 2 and level 3 chargers. That's a huge industry for jobs right now, and on those frameworks. But I was talking to Janelle from Atlantic rather, and in the last few days, and there's over 50 probably green groups, NGOs, volunteer groups that are in Atlantic Canada alone. And they know what skills are needed from engineers, technologists, investors, public financing. And I think really if we work together as green groups and look at what the job potential, it would scare you how, what the good things we are doing. And from living shorelines, we just won awards at Coquin in New Brunswick for climate change vegetated shorelines. And anyways, just wanted to comment on those issues. But micro hydro in itself, and EV green transportation is a big component right now, I know, in our forecasting for green jobs and development. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And I welcome everybody to actually go through our websites too, because we actually have done some studies on specific areas like energy efficiency in buildings, for example. Some of them are national in scope, but really the application across regions kind of apply or stand. But thank you for this is a work in progress, and I think more needs to be done in terms of kind of bringing everything together and really having a good snapshot of where we're at and where things are going.
I can just jump in quickly on that if you want, Colleen.
For sure.
You talked about hydro, and in Newfoundland and Labrador, we're lucky enough to have soon to have a 98% clean electricity grid, driven mostly by hydro. And there's lots of opportunity for other hydro developments to facilitate the same type of penetration throughout Atlantic Canada. But and I think we try to capture that in the electrification piece and the skills that are associated with moving from fossil fuels to electricity to take advantage of that clean energy. But I think what is outside of our control, and these are beyond our scope of work, is we can't control whether or not another large project occurs. And of course, should it happen, there would be all sorts of jobs, hundreds and hundreds of jobs associated with those kinds of things. But we just kind of wanted to focus in on what we know we can't control at this point, and we capture that in electrification, we think.
Yeah, and then alternative energy, obviously we mentioned the renewables, and yeah, you're right, Kieran, we did recognize the difference between large scale renewable and projects that there's opportunities there, but really greater presence of the small scale renewables and stakeholders within. There's another hand that's up. I don't know if we can cover Chris. Hopefully we can do this in 2 minutes and then wrap up.
Okay, no problem. I can do it in 2 minutes. My name is Chris Drudge. I'm the project manager for the Net Zero project. And this is not really related to that project, but appreciate the invite. This is about the career transition, the employment transition with the skilled workers that are currently in our sector, which we're focusing on the energy, oil and gas sector. And I'm sure it's been considered, but I just want to put it out there as a statement, I guess, is that, you know, we talk about like they're transferable with upskilling and training, but there is not a huge allowance for gaps in that transition when people are in one job and they need to go to another one, or they get unemployed and they have to go move to another industry. And a lot of these skilled trades and, you know, certified individuals and qualified individuals and highly educated engineers, and they're going to go elsewhere in the world because it's easier to do, because the industry itself is cross-border, particularly in Atlantic Canada, where the expat population is quite large, working elsewhere in the world. So it will be easier for these individuals to move elsewhere in the world with relatively the same pay, or more or greater than it would be to transition into a green job role, especially if there's any barriers in, you know, finance, financial, impact on them and their families, training restrictions where it's unaffordable or unrealistic, or certification that requires, months, years in school. So I just want to put it out there. I know time is short, but I'm sure it's been considered, but that's a huge concern for me personally when looking at the workforce currently engaged in the energy industry, that trying to transition into a green industry, green job industry. Thanks.
Thank you so much for your comment, Chris. And we recognize that too, even just from a numbers game, right? The number of workers being displaced or kind of temporarily losing their jobs in oil and gas versus the number of jobs that are available within, renewable energy, for example, is something to consider. But one of the things we did point out in our research and in the slides we did today was that there is an opportunity for those workers that their jobs might be jeopardized within these traditional industries like oil and gas to transition within their industry to greener jobs, or as these companies kind of try to have a diversified energy asset. Those are opportunities as well for them. But you're right. I mean, it's both a game of, how can industry strategize around this talent opportunity, but ultimately it is also the workers needing to make the decision of what's best for them. So thank you for those comments, and hopefully more could be done around this area. Kieran, Jenny, do you have anything else to say? We'll wrap up. I've kind of moved over to the final slide of today. It's just an overview of our organization, so what we do, and then obviously we want to continue the conversation. So if you want to reach out to us, feel free to do that. You can visit our websites or just reach out to us via the chat or follow-up email. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed this session. We will again send out the webinar recording once it's made available to us, and we can share it to all the attendees today, as well as people who may have missed it. I'll follow up. There was a question of whether we are sharing the actual slides themselves. I'll confirm that if we can when I circulate that webinar recording. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully your weekend has started already. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.